going to go onto the flat fell seam. This seam is often used when you sew a shirt or a blouse, also in children's clothes, where you want a little bit of strength as well. It's a self-enclosed seam, but unlike the French seam, where we had the enclosed seam on the inside of the fabric, or the garment, we will now have it on the outside, pressed flat and finished nicely. Again, like with the French seam, you're actually going to go and line up the wrong sides. I'm using a seam allowance of 1.5, lowering my presser foot. And again, I'm stitching a straight stitch, back stitching as I start and finish. And you can I just wanted to point out, you can see as I'm sewing how I'm just moving my hands along here. This is really what you want to do to guide your fabric and stop it from shifting. You don't want to manipulate too much. So again, I've got my seams on the wrong side of the fabric. I will iron them open. And now I'm going to trim down one side of the seam allowance, leaving the other side intact. If you want to, you can flip this piece of fabric to the other side just to make sure you're only trimming the seam allowance. It's very easy as you're trying to get a project finished to cut into something that you might not be able to fix as easily afterwards. Believe me, it's happened to me. So I'm just trimming this down. Maybe about 3 millimeters from the edge. Then it's back to the ironing board. And you're going to turn this under. Give it a press. Next thing you want to do is move this ironed under seam allowance and fold it over your trimmed seam. Press it again, just to keep it nice and flat as you sew. It'll save you a lot of pinning and it'll stop your fabric from shifting. If you like, put a few pins in. And remember to pull them out as you go. I know that some sewing teachers will tell you to leave your pins in as you sew. However, if you do, you will find that sometimes the needle doesn't slip over it and the needle will actually go down on your metal pin and break, which can cause bursts in your bobbin case and over time damage your machine, but also break your needle, which you then have to replace. Okay, so I've pinned this in place. Now what I want to do is sew a seam very close to the edge there. Just a couple of millimeters in. Do back stitch again. Remove your pins as you go. And if you're finding it hard to keep your stitching straight, as a reference guide, you could, for example, use this edge here, lining up with your initial seam, your initial stitching. And you can see I haven't actually done a very tidy job here as I was talking. Let's look at this part of the seam. So you can see how this side, the seam is just like a normal seam with a stitching to its side. And then over here, we've got the folded under edge enclosed with our other stitching. So it gives us a really nice, strong seam. When you're doing sleeves or shirts, what you want to do is make sure that your seam, your flat fell seam, is actually going towards your shoulder for a consistent look. So you want to make sure they always go in the same direction on either side. Alright, so this is our seams for now and the seams finishes, and we're going to move on to buttonholes.